Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Norfatra, and then I will open this video. Okay, in this video we will presentate my group. My group gather is Sociolinguistic Patterns. Okay, my members name there are Muhammad Arul Ahyat, Setia Wardana, Dian Reski, Cantika Widya Sista, Nirmawati, Norfatra, dan Kiki Zulkiana. Yes, okay. Let's check it out. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Norfatra, and then I will present the point is language and social class. Okay. Let's begin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The principal social dimension social linguists have been concerned with are social class, sex, style, and networks. Of these, social class have probably been the most researched. Many social linguistic studies have started by grouping individuals into social classes on the basis of factors such as education, occupation, and income, and each other. Okay, just as the fusion of linguistic features may be halted by natural geographical barriers, it may also be impeded by social class stratification. Similarly, the boundaries between social dialects tend for the most part not to be obsolete. Yes, the pattern of parents for post-vocalic are show fine stratification or continuous variation along a linguistic dimension as well as an extralinguistic one. Okay, there are consonantal variables. There are three consonantal variables which varied with a social class. Where investigate the variable refers to alternation between a velar and a velar nasal in word with ing ending such as reading, singing. The more likely he or she is to use higher percentage of alveolar rather than velar nasal endings. The variable refers to alternation between h and of h in words beginning with h such as heard, hand. Okay. The use glottal stops. The use of glottal stop is particularly social stigmatized in medial position. The incidence of glottal stop in relation to social in Glasgow for all environments compared with that occurring only in medial position. Okay. The result show that glottal stops are the norm for this community. If we look at all the environments, even the highest social class uses glottal stop nearly half the time, and the lowest class almost all the time. Okay, there is enough for me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
In style, there are 2 points. Point 1, regional and social dialect differentiation. Not only do some of the same language feature figures in pattern of both regional and social dialect differentiation, but they also display correlation with other social factors. The intersection of social and stylist continuity is one of the most important findings of quantitative social linguistics. Namely, if a feature occurs more frequently in working class speech, then it will occur more frequently in the informal speech of all speakers. The point 2, variable ing in Norwich. Variable ing in Norwich was social class distribution we have already looked at. The behavior of each social class group varies according to whether its style is casual or formal. Style can range from formal to informal depending on social context, relationship of the participants, social class, sex, age, physical environment, and topic. Although each class had different average scores in each style, and group style shift in the same direction in their more formal speech style, that is in the direction of the standard language. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Fatra, okay? And then I will present my point. My point is language and style. Okay, let's begin. Yeah, this has been called the crossover pattern and is taken to be a manifestation of high correction. The behavior of the lower middle class is governed by their recognition of an exterior standard of correctness and their insecurity about their own speech. They see the use of post-vocalic R as a prestige marker of the highest social group. Okay, yeah, like check this speakers who is to dissociate themselves from this way of speaking, often correct form which contain the sound I, yes, so that tiled becomes tired and boil becomes bird. Okay, speakers alter these sounds because they are aware of the toy 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 okay, a stereotype which to them suggests that is oi is an incorrect pronunciation of ear. So they correct all cases where oi occurs to ear, like that, ear. In case like thirdly, yes, this products from which is not only hypercorrect but also in fact non-existent in the more prestigious. Pay attention to their speech in some circumstances more than others. They also make an judgment depending on whom they are talking to. Okay, yeah. In choosing which speech from to use, yeah, they assess not only the relative formality, yeah, or informality of the context, but also the audience to whom their talk is directed. Yes. The accommodation speakers make toward their audition makers this depend on the social status of the participant, as we saw in the Japanese example in chapter 1, used to illustrate and the concept of register, okay, which is closely related to style. In some cases, the accommodation, yes, speakers make involve adopting forms similar to those used by the person being spoken to. This is called convergence, because one person speaks form because similar to those of another. When yes, when they use this speech style, yes, they are dissociating themselves from with mainstream society and its fellows, yes. Speakers have at their disposal a range of form which they can use to influence how their message is to interpret how they view the context or topic, and how they align themselves with their audience, just like that. Okay, my name is Norfatra, and I think enough for me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
What is gender? Gender is a concept used to identify differences between men and women in socio-cultural influences. Gender is defined as the visible differences between men and women in terms of values and behavior. Gender is usually used to indicate the division of labor that considered appropriate for men and women. In sociolinguistics, language and gender have a very close relationship. There is a saying, why do women speak differently from men? Okay, in other words, we are looking at several causes that women prefer to use standard language compared to men. In this regard, it is worth paying attention that language as a social part, an act that contains values, intricacies of social network, politics, culture, and then the relationship between age and society. Next is gender roles. Gender roles are the way people act, what they do and say to express being a boy or a girl, a man or a woman. These characteristics are shaped by society. Gender roles are social and behavioral norms that are generally considered appropriate for either a man or a woman in a social or interpersonal relationship. The product of the socialization are feminine and masculine. Next is minimal response. Minimal response is one of the ways in which the communicative behavior of a man or a woman different. For example, women has respond frequently when they have a conversation. Example is paralinguistic features such as and yeah, which is behavior associated with collaborative their language use. And then men has less respond than women when they have a conversation. In the same example, men generally use and yeah less frequently. Next is the difference between men and women speak. In reality check, women talk more than men, talk too much, are more polite, are hesitant or indecisive, are competitive and more cooperative. And then men, they are swear more, talk about emotion, don't talk about emotions, talk about women and machines in the same way, give more command, are competitive in conversation, and insult each other frequently. Fact: women use more speech than men. Why? Okay. First is women are social status conscious. The way they speak shows their social status or social class. The second is women's role. The society expects better behavior from women than from women. And the last is women as a subordinate group. They are avoid offending men, they use polite speech, and then they are protect women's face.
Oke, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Satya Wardana Putra, and I'm from Group 3. And right now, I'm gonna presentate about language and age. So, for the first material, we're gonna go to what type of age pattern. So, for the age pattern, is a typical sociolinguistic based on the age of a speaker. It describes a characteristic type of age-graded linguistic version and describe change in the speech behavior in individual speakers as they get older. So general linguistic tendencies can be determined for different stage. Okay, for the first one is adolescence, is a younger adults up to 50 years of age, and then older adult is over 15 years of age. So for the second material is the formulation of age patterns. So for the formulation of age pattern, there is a relationship between the age of a speaker and the use of particular linguistic variety in the form that number one is adolescence. Adolescents will generally use more non-standard varieties for the younger adults. Non-prestige varieties, other specific anti-prestige, from adolescence to adulthood to use non-standard forms of speech will gradually decrease in favor of more standard form of speech, prestige varieties, and the particular stage in late adulthood. And the second one is the frequency. The frequency using standard forms the speech will be again decrease. Okay, will again decrease within older adults and more standard forms, non-prestige varieties will be used. So the third material is the variable may exhibit age grading. So for this material, we first have to know is the age pattern shows regularity. What that mean regularity? Regularity that means is the pattern is repeat with each new generation of speakers. And we back to our last material is tables variable may exhibit age grading is the existence of the linguistic marketplace can be seen as an influential factors from the occurrence of the age graded variation. That's for me. I hope. I'm sorry if I have a mistake. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Yeah, thank you very much. And language and social network. 1. The concept of social network. The concept of social network adapted from anthropology into sociolinguistics takes into account different social links, habits of individuals, and their agree on involvement in the local community. The use of network as analytical construct does not require grouping individuals into social linguistics. 2. Type of network. Network analysis was applied to the study of three working-class communities in Belfast, Northern Ireland. The different types of network within which individualist socialists were examined, and network strength was correlated with linguistic variables. A measure of network strength was deficit, which looked into account the extent of the density and multiplicity of different network types. For example, a dense network is one in which the people whom a given speaker know and interact with also know each other. A multiplex network is one each in which the individuals who interact are tied to one another in other way. Thus, if two men in a network interact both as workmates in the same factory and as consist, there is more than one basis to their relationship with one another. 3. Extensive relationship between network and social class. A broad link between network and social class to the extent that middle class speakers tend to have closer network than the working class. However, dense network may also be found at the upper levels of society. All boy network, whose members have usually been educated at English public school and at Oxford and Cambridge, who gave rise to an equally distinctive speech variant, RP. More and that, women had sense network in Belfast, which suggests an explanation for some of the patterns of sex differentiation other sociolinguistics have found. 4. Some factors that are rarely developed. A measure of network strength was deficit, which looked into account the extent of the density and multiplicity of different network types. For example, a dense network is one in which the purple worm, a guest speaker, knows and interacts with also know each other. A multiplex network is one in which the individuals who interact are tied to one another in another way. Thus, if two men in a network interact but as workmen at thank you very much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Social stratification will be an important dimension in accounting for linguistic variation in all speech communities. A basic premise is that inequalities in society will be reflected in the distribution of social dialect. In many other parts of the world, village-based societies, which were formerly stratified along traditional lines of kin and other social networks, have now assumed the kind of class-based hierarchy commonly found in industrialized nations. The process of standardization. The process of standardization converts one variety into a standard by fixing and regulating its spelling, grammar, word, and pronunciation. In dictionaries and grammars, which serve as authorities in prescriptive teaching to both native speakers and foreign learners, standardization is not an inherent but rather an acquired or deliberately and artificially imposed characteristic. Most of the present-day standard language of Europe emerged within a climate of intense political nationalism. The spread of these new standard languages was made successfully by the printing press and the rise of the newly literate middle class, who adopted them eagerly as a means of social advancement and mobility. The advantages and disadvantages of language standardization. The language standardization has four main positive effects towards the speaker of the language. The first one is allow the language to serve as a model for everyone in the community to agree upon in order to communicate. The second is having a common, mutually comprehensible language unifies the members of a community. The third one is can be employed to reflect and symbolize some kind of identity and can also be used to give prestige to speaker. The last one is make the language easier to teach in school. On the other hand, language standardization also have disadvantages. The disadvantages of this case are much concerned with the elitism, inferiority, and neglecting.
Standardization and its effect in Papua New Guinea. Linguistic diversity is still seen as an obstacle to development. An essential feature of linguistic stratification in Europe is an ideology of contempt. Subordinate language are despised language. From the 16th century, the label barbarous was applied by speakers of dominant language to those who spoke subordinate language. The word barbarian comes to us from Greek barbarous, meaning one who babbles. The Greek called other barbarian if they could not speak Greek or pronounce it improperly. They had been consciously manipulated and standardized to play a role in the dissemination of state ideology. France is a case in point, where unity of language was seen as integral to the revolution at a time when most of the population were native speakers of varieties other than France. Moreover, the revolution attacked the linguistic distinction employed by the aristocracy, thereby trying to create a classless France. The revolution called for universal primary education in which all citizens were to be trained in France. The literary variety of France chosen for standardization was, however, reserved for secondary school and higher level of education and government. Thus, the new standard diffused uniquely through society and created a new linguistic hierarchy. In Papua New Guinea, for instance, colonial rule altered the traditional egalitarian relationship among languages to produce a situation in which indigenous languages are developed in relation to Tok Pisin and English-based Pidgin and English, which are languages of wider currency and thus have a higher value in the linguistic marketplace. To speak English was considered good, to speak Tok Pisin was bad. But to speak Tok Place, literally Tok Place or village language, was worse. The school visit had signs reminding pupils that English was the language of the classroom. In the case of Papua New Guinea, indigenous view of language and society class with those of the colonizers. In pre-colonial Papua New Guinea, linguistic diversity was greater than in Europe, but there were no rigidly stratified society, no far-reaching empire, and no nationalistic consequences to this horizontal linguistic diversity was not accompanied by any vertical sociolinguistic stratification of the type commonly found in Western industrialized society today. Ideas about which language. Many believe the native were mentally inferior and it was therefore pointless to give them more than enough training to be the servant of white men. The determination of the white community to maintain its prestige and upper position in the colonial hierarchy was reflected in the token educational facilities provided for natives in the early years. There were no government-run schools in this day, only mission schools which could use whatever language they liked. The various missions were not always agreed which language to use in their school, while almost all of them agreed that indigenous languages were primitive and inferior to European language. One justification used by the Lutherans for their policy of vernacular education was based on the assumption the English was too sophisticated a language for the native, even though they, they did not have a high opinion of it. Other missions used Tokpism because they recognized its usefulness as a language franca. Many of potential converts could gather at the mission station already spoken. By shifting their language from Tayak to Tokpisin, however, Gapun people are attempting to gain symbolic association with an entry into the sphere of the development economy, much in the same way the young women in Oberwart, Australia, choose German over Hungarian because they perceived idea, something they encountered through occasional visit to towns several days distant by canoe. Through migrant and things they bring back and through information with noted bibliography. The nation of use and non-use speech can be found in Alan Row's article, first published in 1976 and reprinted in 1980. The example of the Edinburgh tenant is described by Jordan, 1970, and the quotation by Jonathan Swift is cited in Corfield, 1991, by Nordberg, 1994. Book deals with urbanization in the Nordic countries. The New York City study was done by William LeBoeuf and described in his book 1966, and in LeBoeuf the reading and Norwich data are from Peter Struggle 1974, research in England, see also Struggle 1972. The Glasgow data are taken from r.key.s. Macaulay study 1977, Macaulay 1991 looks at the range of signatic and discourse variables in Scottish English. The Swedish sociolinguistic research was done by research at FUMS at the University of Uppsala, most of which has appeared in Swedish in a series of FUMS reports. See Nordberg 1990 for a bibliography. The Belfast study is described in Leslie Milroy's 1980 book and James Milroy's 1992 book. An example, the New York approach applied to Africa can be found in John Russell's 1982 article, and to Brazil in Stella Botornico Ricardo's 1985 book.